Alrighty. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you all for coming today. This is Wild Ones presenting a presentation on Elon's creating a pollinator-friendly yard in Suburbia. Um, my name is Jeremy Rappaport. My nickname's Moose. I use he/him pronouns. I'm originally from Lake County, Illinois. The bachelor's degree in fisheries and wildlife sciences, a master's in restoration ecology. I'm the land manager of Milwaukee's own Riverside Park up on the northeast side. Um, and I am the Wild Ones National Board Secretary. And that is who I'm here representing today. So a little bit about Wild Ones first. Wild Ones is an organization that promotes the use of native plants through local and educational programs. We have over 100 chapters nationwide, two in the Milwaukee area. And just go online and join the chapter nearest you. The mission here at Wild Ones is to promote native landscapes through education, advocacy, and collaborative action. Our vision is native plants and natural landscapes thriving in every community. And our position statement is connecting people and native plants to a healthy planet. So just a little bit about today's presentation. We're going to start with a little bit of history of lawns. We're going to go over some of the benefits of lawns, what those benefits cost us, some of our local pollinators. Then we'll dive into bee lawns a little bit and then talk about some other improvements to your yard that you can make to help further benefit the pollinators in your neighborhood. So brief history of lawns. The first lawns that we're aware of, the first things that we could think of as lawns were in North Africa around the 1100s. They were managed mostly by grazing. They moved their way to the United States in about the 1600s. The first colonists to arrive in America brought with them their sheep, their pigs, their cows, and had them graze on the local fauna or flora. Turns out the grass wasn't so resilient to all those hooves, all that repetitive grazing, and it turned to mud quick. So they brought over their own plants. They brought over Kentucky bluegrass, Dutch white clover, and dandelion, which was actually brought over as a non-negotiable medicine. I believe, dandelion was critical to their medical health. In the 1700s, lawns started becoming a status symbol in Europe. In the Americas, both George Washington and Thomas Jefferson at Monticello and Mount Vernon, respectively, popularized lawns. They liked the European aesthetic and they brought them to America, which made the wealthy in America start to like lawns as well. If the president does it, you want to do it. Some inventions started coming up that made lawns even more practical. We got our first lawnmower in the US in around 1868, and our first hose sprinkler was in the 1870s. And this is actually a patent I pulled. I love that the very first ornamental lawn sprinkler had just a little dude on it hanging out. Um, this was only possible due to municipal pressurized water systems. So without having municipal pressurized water, lawns wouldn't persist and we would not have them that many that we have today. Later in the 1800s, Riverside, Illinois, was drafted by Frederick Law Olmsted. Those of you not familiar with Olmsted, Olmsted was the landscape architect who designed Central Park in New York City. He's also designed three parks in Milwaukee: Lake Park, Riverside Park, and Washington Park. His concept was one of the first to involve setting homes back from the sidewalk and roadways to feature a prominent lawn. And it was a way to try to convey middle class prosperity to outside communities. There was also a very popular book called The Beautification of Suburban Homes. Um, you can see in the quote I have highlighted, they talk about lawns being closely shorn to the ground, being a high priority for that. In the early 1900s, golf starts increasing in popularity in the United States, particularly among the wealthy and politician classes. So the politicians used their political force to have the uh, USDA develop new breeds of grasses that can grow in different conditions. So you can have more golf courses in more places and grass that is more trample resistant. Lawn is still maintained as a status system As as trains move through suburbs, all of a sudden those suburbs are now exposed to new visitors, and those visitors are judging yards, and so people become more conscious of what their yards look like because that'll at least start to influence property values. The big suburban boom started with Levittown and the GI Bill. This was how lawns really got into the mainstream. Um, Lawns were not something most people were accustomed to growing. So the first wave of lawns grown in those Levittown suburbs were actually mud pits. They just had a bunch of people who did not know what they were doing and kind of flooded out. So they started making lawn stores in those Levittowns and having gardening columns in their newspapers to help guide those people into producing better lawns. Prior to the 1950s, lawns were actually not just grass. They were a mix of grass and Dutch white clover and dandelions, a whole mix of meadow flowers. But during World War II, we invented 2,4-D, which was originally invented as a weapon to kill the food crops of our enemies. It never got used during World War II, but after World War II, they were looking for applications. And the first one was for cereal crops, but then they decided they could market it towards suburban homeowners. So they basically started popularizing the idea that a lawn should not have other plants in it. It should just be grass. It was kind of one of those, we have a solution, so we need to invent the problem. Nowadays, grass lawns are the most commonly irrigated crop in North America, narrowly beating out irrigated corn. It is about 2% of the surface area in the lower 48 United States. That roughly is 40.5 million acres, or roughly the area of Greece. That's a little bit about the history. Let's talk about what lawns give us. Lawns are useful. This is not an anti-lawn talk. Lawns create erosion control. So as rain rains down, it holds your soil in place. It allows that soil to infiltrate into the soil column and allows you to store that water on your property longer. Temperature regulation. So some of you may recognize this map. This is a map of Milwaukee, particularly on the northeast side. Right down here, that's where all of those big tall buildings are. Right here is my own Riverside Park, but you can see we have parks throughout that are a little cooler, more or less. Urban settings have an urban heat island effect. That is about 1 to 7 degrees of heating higher than it would be in surrounding suburbs. And that's due to the concrete in those areas. So, in urban settings in particular, grass space is really valuable for reducing that temperature. Riverside Park can boast that we have about a 5 degree difference between our neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods that do not have parks. Um, the most important thing that grass lawns do is they are trample resistant. So what I have here is this picture of a meadow which has a mix of flowers and grasses in it. You can see people take that shortcut all the time, killing all the flowers, but the grasses remain. Grass is uniquely trample resistant, and that is the utility you should look at it for in your lawn. Grass should go where you walk and play. That is its primary function. It also can serve as a carbon sequestration source under some conditions. If you were to leave the grass clippings on your lawn rather than throw them away, you can actually sequester around 16 million tons of carbon a year. It also supports life. They get a reputation for being completely ecologically desolate, and they relatively are, but they can contribute to the life cycle of about 133 species. Now, the numbers I'm going to put up for these type of slides are all based on Illinois, so that utility will vary depending on what part of the country you're in. But here's the cost. Lawns will take about 59 million pounds of pesticide per year in the United States. Pesticides include insecticides and herbicides. 16 billion pounds of fertilizer and 200 gallons of water per person per day. That's not per lawn per day. That is per human being in the United States per day. Many of whom do not have lawns. They live in apartments. So just a, a lot of water. It's about a third of all residential use. Gasoline is about 800 million gallons of gas that is uh, used to power the lawnmower equipment, with an additional 17 million gallons spilled a year because of the difference in filling up a lawnmower versus filling up a car. The total emissions for the leaf blowers, weed whackers, and lawnmowers in America equal all of the auto emissions in California. It's about 4 to 5% of the US emissions. Much of that fertilizer that's put down is put down by amateur appliers. They intend to put down between 40 and 60% more than they need, and that ends up running off into the water. That creates eutrophication, which is when our water bodies get too much nutrients in them. They produce a bunch of algae, and then that algae consumes all the oxygen, and everything in the water body dies. So that is some of the costs of those lawns. Lawns do have utility, but it comes at pretty steep costs. So that's a little bit about the lawns. Let's go about the pollinators. We have about 400 bee species here in Wisconsin, 836 species in the family of bees, wasps, and ants. Uh, there's the great black wasp right there. Up here, we have our honeybee, which is not native. Kind of think of it like a tool that humans use. These will pollinate our food crops and provide us with honey. Below that, we have a leaf cutter bee. This is one of our more native bees that you'd see competing with those honeybees. Below that is a cuckoo bee, which lays its eggs in the nest of a specific bee species. These cuckoo bees tend to be very imperiled because they rely on stable populations of other species that are native. This is our endangered rusty patch bumblebee that actually tend to do really well in urban and suburban settings. So this is a target that you really should, you can make a big difference with this bee. They're doing terribly in rural settings. They seem to be very susceptible to the insecticides used out there. So providing good habitat could actually help an invasive species or an endangered species here in your backyard. Below that, I have an oak gall wasp, which is kind of a reminder that a lot of our wasps and bees are really small, like almost gnat sized. And most people don't notice them, but they're really important in the ecosystem. And they make up part of that 836 species you find here in Wisconsin. For butterflies and moths, we have 2,100 species of butterflies and moths in Wisconsin. About 90% of those will be moths and 10% will be butterflies. Um, we have the red admiral, everybody's favorite woolly bear, the pink geometer chickweed moth, and my personal favorite, the hummingbird moth, hummingbird clearwing. Those aren't the only pollinators, though. We have another whole host of pollinators. There's beetles. We have the soldier beetle and the locust borer over there. Flies will pollinate some flowers. We have birds and some more traditional flies. And in other settings, lizards and bats are also significant pollinators, though not so much here in Wisconsin. So, talking about how these pollinators influence our ecosystem, they do two things. One, they keep this bottom layer of the food web growing. We have to, a lot of our plants require insect pollination in order to persist, and a lot of our animals eat those plants. The ones that don't eat those plants often eat the bugs that eat those plants. So, the pollinators are important both as a food source and maintaining the food source below that. So this is the not fun slide. We are kind of in the midst of an insect apocalypse. In the past 150 years, we've lost between 5 and 10% of all insect species. We are losing between 1 and 2% of insect biomass per year. So that is the total weight of all the bugs. That is going down by about 1% a year. 28% of North American bumblebees are threatened. The butterfly numbers are decreasing about 1.6% a year over the last 4 decades, which is not great. We talked about that food web earlier and how these pollinators serve as the bottom rung of that food web. The next rung up tends to be those birds. And since 1970, bird populations in the US have dropped 30%. Just as a reference to how many bugs it takes to keep a bird population going, we've got the chickadee over there on the right. That chickadee has about somewhere around 7 eggs in their nest. It'll take them about 9,000 caterpillars over the course of a few weeks to bring those eggs from hatchlings to fledglings. So 9,000. Now you go one rung up that ladder. In my park, our top predator is the Cooper's hawk. The Cooper's hawk eats chickadees, and it takes about 143 chickadees to raise a crop of Cooper's hawk nests. So when you start multiplying that out, we need a lot of caterpillars to sustain our food web. The other one to consider is over here we have the whippoorwill. It's kind of been called the sound of summer. It's a bird that flies through the air at night with a wide open mouth, just hoping to gobble up whatever's floating in the air. Sometimes referred to as air plankton. So you can think of these as almost like the big whales of the sky. Well, there's not enough biomass in the air column anymore to support these in most of the country. So their populations have declined about 70% in this time. But let's say you don't care about the birds. They haven't done anything for you. 70% of crops require some form of insect pollination. That's about 1,200 crops annually. It's between 1.2 and $5.4 billion a year in the US, which both seems low and a wide range, but those are the numbers I found. Half of the world's food oils, fibers, plant-based raw materials all come from insect-pollinated plants. Plus all the other things plants do for us, like provide oxygen and hold our soil in place. So we are at a situation where we have 2% of the surface area of lower 48 states occupied by a very expensive crop. Lots of nitrogen, lots of water, lots of fuel emissions. And we have an insect apocalypse, partially caused by habitat loss and the inability to, habitat loss and herbicides and insecticides. So what is the solution? There are some native plants that work well in Milwaukee and one in Waukesha, not so much Milwaukee, but we have common yarrow, or specifically yak yarrow, which is a subspecies of yarrow. You can have an entire yard of yarrow. I've seen it before. You can mow over it. It's like these little feathery fern leaves. They're excellent. Ground plum is another legume. That's the one you might have to be out in like Waukesha or Walworth counties for. It likes a little bit more sand, but a nitrogen producer. Mock strawberry and violets also do really well, and you'll find them throughout Milwaukee lawns. All of these will help pollinators. The more diverse your lawn is, the more pollinators you'll be able to help. So back to this slide, we have the grass monoculture with no flowers or anything like that in there. And then we're going to do an ecosystem of non-native. So this is your weeding mix. This is just, if you let it go, you never cared, you didn't put anything native in, you'd have Kentucky bluegrass, some perennial rye and fescues, crabgrass, some thistle, some creeping Charlie, also called ground ivy, dandelion, and white clover. 616 species. 133 for the monoculture, 616 for zero native species, but just more diverse weeds in your lawn. And just to show the difference between native and non-natives, I picked two analogous plants. These both grow in a little like wet soil. They're both pink. They flower around the same time, but you can see a graph on the bottom. The one on the left is purple loosestrife, and that has a 93% non-native bee pollinator visitor profile. Spotted Joe Pye weed, on the other hand, honeybees are 2.4% of the visitors. The rest being solitary bees, butterflies and moths, bumblebees, and other, which is probably mostly beetles. So you have a bee lawn. You've added the pollinator. What else can you do? Well, some best practices for maintenance of your bee lawn are to use electrical equipment. So we talked about the carbon emissions of those gas-powered lawnmowers and leaf blowers and weed whackers. I manage 44 acres. I use battery-powered equipment. So it is a 1-acre suburban yard does not need gas. I use basically for my lawn mowing, my weed whipping, and leaf blowing is all battery. And I have a battery powered chainsaw that I use sometimes, and I use the gas powered for everything else because it goes a little quicker. But 44 acres. Leave the leaves. So this is where that phosphorus and potassium comes into play. Leaves have both of those nutrients. You can mow through those leaves and mulch them into your yard, and those will be your fertilizer supplement for the potassium and phosphorus. You could also not mow those leaves and pile them up and let those be habitat for moths and lightning bugs, all those animals that need to overwinter in leaf litter. And then no mow May, which has for some reason become a little bit more controversial, but I'm still a big fan. It's a good way to get a lot of blooms out early in spring. Um, those early spring blooms are hard to come by. Our prairies and grasslands don't have a lot of early flowers. Most of those flowers come from woodland habitats in high quality, and most of our woodland habitats are not in high quality. So, giving a nectar and pollen source early in the spring will help boost those pollinator numbers throughout the year. You could try doing some traditional landscaping. So this is a list of non-natives on the right and natives on the left, but they're kind of analogous. So you want a big shade tree in your yard. A ginkgo is a good non-native option, but a bur oak is a good native better option. A small tree that produces nice flowers and fruit. Asian crabapple for non-native is pretty traditional, but Canadian serviceberry is a better option. So I don't know if I have. Okay, so this is the one that I missed the slide on. So for the non-native landscaping, we have a total of 374 species. Not terrible. It's a diverse habitat, so there's a lot of different options. This one over here, 1,480 species. 374, 1,480. Pretty big difference in what you can support when you use native species. Um, Now let's just compare that traditional landscaping of 374 to a single bur oak. This is what we call a keystone species. So if you pick your main shade tree in your yard to be a bur oak, you can help a total of 482 species with just that one planting alone. If you're looking for a list of good plants and choices for your native landscaping, the Xerxes Society is a great resource for what plants help what pollinators. And they have it region specific, so you can find it on their website. The Xerxes Society, for those not familiar, is a endangered insect and pollinator nonprofit based out of California. You could do native ground cover beds. So let's say you're finding that you're actually not using that lawn that much. You've got big spaces under trees that you're not using. We have a couple good options for native ground cover beds. We've got wild ginger up here, big leaf aster, which will have a nice lush ground cover during most of the year, but flower in late fall, pretty nice blooms. We have wild geranium, does really well. And then if you have a dry spot not under a tree, prairie smoke is one of my favorite. It's beautiful. It's popping up right now, so it'll be an early bloomer, but a good ground cover throughout the year. If you like to grow your own food, consider trying to grow a higher proportion of American origin veggies. Um, Service berries, peppers, melons, squashes, beans, tomatoes, potatoes, raspberries, gooseberries, hazelnuts, pawpaws, and sunflower are all from the United States originally and will help native pollinators succeed. They will pollinate your garden for you. And yeah, rain gardens. Rain gardens are another good option. Let's say you have a floody yard. This is one I would recommend maybe hiring somebody for rather than doing yourself. This is a pretty complex thing to build, but it's a great way to have a good pollinator bed that helps retain water on your land. So you'd have a planting on top with a mulch layer and then kind of a drainage layer that allows the rainwater to slowly seep into your yard. We also have native garden designs. This is something that Wild Ones specifically has. Wild Ones has over 20 beautiful professional ecoregion specific free native garden designs. So if you don't know where to get started, We have one of these for Milwaukee done by a Milwaukee landscaper. It'll show you step by step how to reproduce what they draw. This is, I think, the one for Denver, Colorado, but we have a Milwaukee one as well. So I highly recommend using these. You can check them out at nativegardendesigns.wildones.org. In conclusion, pollinators are good. They need your help. There's a lot of options for you to do that help, and they don't have to take a whole lot of effort or require an entire overhaul of your yard. We can win on the margins. We can help make small improvements that make big differences in the aggregate. Um, it is not all or nothing. If you're interested at all in wild ones, please contact us, Wild Ones Native Plants or wildones.org. All righty. Thank you all so much for your time.